From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
I am Shirley Gorn, and I'm an executive assistant in the Office of the Library's Associate Librarian for Library Services. It is my pleasure to introduce Patricia Polacco. An author and illustrator of picture books for children. Born on a farm in Union City, she struggled with reading until she was age 14. Her teachers discovered then that she had a learning disability called dyslexia. Once she got help, she began to read very well. Although she comes from a family of storytellers, she didn't begin writing books until she was 41 years old. Her ideas, drawn from her grandmother's stories about the family's amazing multicultural background. Her work also has been influenced by her love of drawing and painting. Ms. Polacco earned a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in fine arts and a doctorate in art history from Ohio State University. She and her family now lives on what she calls her magical farm in Union City, Michigan. Please join me in welcoming Patricia Polacco.
Be careful with those stairs. No, thank you. Well, God bless you. Thank you. Are you having a wonderful time at this amazing event? You have to know, even as an author, this is when I get a chance to see over in the author's tent people that I have worshiped and admired. And we are just as thunderstruck as you are when we see them. You know, you literally walk up to them and you can't remember what language you speak. You just want to touch them. But oh, this is just wonderful. And how lovely to see all of you here and you wonderful little people. And some kids have already held up some books. I'm pleased to see that. Well, I'm Patricia Polacco, and I write and illustrate children's picture books. Now, what that means is, besides the story you read, I wrote that. But do you know I also drew and painted all of the pictures in the books? Did you know that? All right. So, for me, art is like breathing. I cannot imagine my life without it. How many of you kids love to do art? Let's see. You big kids too. How many? All right. Ooh, good. You might be interested to know, you just heard, but the kids are always startled to hear this because I'm doing schools. I'm out on my fall tour, and when I tell them I did not start writing till I was 41, there's an audible gasp. And I say, listen, it gets worse. I've been writing now for 27 years. And then all the kids sit there and start counting it up. Then they want to tell me how old I am, and I go, you know, I'm really aware of it, but thank you very much. In this 27 years, I've written, illustrated, and sold close to 80 books. I mean, they come out of me so fast, I can barely keep up with them. There's two reasons why, I now realize. The first reason is I come from a family of amazing storytellers. My mother's people came to this country from Russia and the Ukraine. People from that part of the world can't help it. They tell stories. My dad's people came here from Ireland. Show me an Irishman that can't tell a story. There ain't no such thing. And then if any of you have seen the book Chicken Sunday, you've probably figured out. My best friend in the whole world is African American. I grew up with him and I consider his family mine. They came from the bayous of Louisiana. Oh, could they tell stories? So what I'm trying to convey to you, and especially you kids, all of my life I've been used to sitting, actually down on the floor, listening to fabulous stories. My parents were divorced when I was very young. Both of them moved back in with their respective parents. They shared custody in that I did the summers with my father, the school year with my mother, but in both households, I had my grandparents. Now, my mother's mother was the master storyteller. She used to call the time of telling stories fire talking. She'd put a fire in the fireplace in the living room. She'd go in the kitchen and pop a huge bowl of popcorn. If we were lucky, she made fudge. She picked snow apples fresh off from the tree outside of the kitchen. My brother and I'd go in with our little bowls, and she'd wedge apple and put in some fudge, put in some popcorn. Then she'd say, "Go in living room. I'm going to come in and fire talk to you." And we'd roar in and sit down and wait, and she'd explode into stories. Honest to God, no exaggeration, I've heard them all, probably 1,000 times. I do remember this: whenever she would finish a story, my brother and I would lean into her and say, "Okay, that story you just told, is that a true story?" She'd look at us over her glasses and say, "Well, of course it's true story, but it may not have happened." I realize now what she was saying is profound, because, you guys, all stories are true. They all are. Whether the circumstance they're describing ever happened or not doesn't matter, because the truth is the journey you children take through that story. Did it make you laugh? Did it make you cry? Did it make you wonder about things? Did it make you seek and want justice? That's the truth of a story. Now, I heard so many stories in my young life. The other thing that I loved too is my family were great readers. I remember when I was 5, climbing up into the lap of somebody that I loved, and they'd open a book, and I'd put my ear next to their breastbone, and they would start reading, and just their voice washing through my body, I became part of that story. And this was important. I mean, they told stories, but to be around people who also read. So as a little girl, you can imagine how thrilled I was at the thought that soon, I'm going to school and I'm going to learn how to read. Now, in my day, it wasn't kindergarten. You were taught in the 1st grade. And I remember when I fronted up in school, I can tell you my teacher's name. Her name was Evelyn Bice. And when we all came into her room, this is 1st grade, all of us kids were in the Green Circles reading club. But after a while, I noticed some kids were in the yellow circles, some kids were in the red circles, some were in the blue circles. I was still in the green circles. And you have to understand, in my family, they do an amazing ceremony for the youngest child just before they go to school. They put a book in their hand. The family surrounds the child. They pour honey on the cover of the book. The child is then asked to taste. Then the family asks, "Well, what does this taste like?" The answer is, "Oh, this is sweet." And then the family in unison says, "Yes, but so is knowledge. And knowledge is like the bee who made this honey. You're going to have to chase it through the pages of a book." So there was the promise, and it didn't come. At 6 years old, I realized I'm flawed and there's something very wrong with me, and the rest of the world is perfect. It didn't matter how hard I tried. I tried so hard. The printed word on a page wouldn't go in. Now, you're probably wondering, how then did I get through school? I was very adept at memorizing what another kid next to me had read. Then when I was asked to read, I would say the same thing. So I'd get yelled at for being in the wrong place in the book. My teachers, I fooled them all the way to my 14th year. Imagine. So the book, Thank You, Mr. Falker, deals with this struggle. In the book, however, I had to make my character actually much younger than I was. I was actually 14 years old when I learned to read. And George Falker was my teacher at Willard Junior High in Berkeley, California. And I remember at that time, too, I was being tortured and teased by my classmates. They called me dumb. They called me stupid. They called me fat. They called me poor white trash. I mean, I remember this. And I was broken. And I went into his class. He was a mid-year transfer in. And when George Falker bounded through that door, what I loved about him, he was very tall. And he wore bright colors. Now you have to understand, you kids, maybe this isn't true for you, but in my day, teachers wore very somber colors. They didn't dress in bright colors, but he did. But he jumped into that room, and he turned the room into something very different. I mean, I by then was going to school to be tortured every single day. Instead, he put a rug under his desk. He put a lamp on his desk. He put growing green things all over the ledges. He put posters of old masters on the wall. He played music during class, classical music, but very quietly. And there was almost ambient light. It wasn't garish and bright. It didn't take me long to realize this is a place I'm not going to be tortured. This is like home. And it was he, of course, who discovered that I could draw light years ahead of my age. Teachers now can pick out learning difficulty instantly. And I guess one of the tip-offs, if a child is not reading and doing numbers, they may have an amazing aptitude for art. It's as if one side of the brain shuts down, the other one clicks into hyperdrive. That's what was happening to me. But I wanted so much to please him. And I remember one day he came in, and he chose me that day to stay after school to wash blackboards. Now, most of you in this room are too young to know what a blackboard is. But in the old days, there was slate boards, and the teacher used white chalk to do the lessons, and they would get cloudy and white by the end of the day. You'd have to go in with a rag and a bucket and wash them down to return them to a fresh surface to draw on. I guess when I was in high school, those boards became green, and the chalk was yellow. Now they use smart boards, which is amazing to me. I mean, at any rate, I was invited by Mr. Falker one day to come after school and help him wash blackboards. You have to understand, people, in most schools in our country now, a male teacher may not be alone with a female student after hours. What have we become? So I fronted up with my little bucket and my little sponge. And he put My Fair Lady on the phonograph. I mean, this is how old I am, a phonograph. And I'm at that board, and I'm going like 90 and washing it away. And he came up behind me, and he put his hand in the center of my back. He said, Patricia, I'm asking you now, I want you to make certain letters with the sponge on that board. The letters he gave me and the numbers he gave me immediately showed the code, and he understood now what was the matter. And as soon as I knew he knew, I wanted to run, because you see, any teachers in this room, you have to understand, I didn't trust any of you enough to tell you what kind of trouble I was in. I wanted you to like me, and I thought if you knew I was dumb, you wouldn't like me anymore. So this was the secret of my life that I was guarding, and he now knew it. And I remember wanting to drop the sponge and wanting to back away and run. He put his hand in the center of my back. To this day, when I am facing something I don't think I can, his hand is still there. I can feel him. And he knelt next to me and he said, oh, Patricia, you have something that has a name, and there's thousands of people like you. And he said, I bet you think you're dumb. And I started squalling and howling and crying and said, well, but I am. And he said, Tricia, if you have fooled us for 14 years, you're not dumb. He said, I don't think I can help you because I'm not an expert, but I'm going to get somebody who can. Out of his own pocket, and ladies and gentlemen, teachers today are now paying for supplies for children, buying clothes for them, giving them special educational, but it is coming out of their pockets. So, out of his pocket, he paid for an instructor, her name was Ruth Plessy, to come every day after school and work with me. We used balance boards, colored acetates, physical exercises, crawling. If you're educators, you know what he was doing. I didn't. And the thing that helped me the most, and I think this is something worth hearing, he also put me in front of the works of M.C. Escher. Now, M.C. Escher is the master of tessellation, but he also morphs positive and negative space. And as soon as I saw that work, I understood, and I'll tell you in a minute, how I read. At any rate, I do remember the day that he put text in front of me, and all of a sudden, I had the aha moment. My eyes looked at what was on the page. I got a mental image. The same thing came out of my mouth. It was on that page. Now, for you, this is simple. You have to understand, for me, I had just climbed Mount Everest. And I shook and cried because I understood it. And then it was as if something opened up. I got sentences, then an entire paragraph. And I remember that day running all the way home. We lived on Russell Street in Berkeley, California. A fire station now stands where our house did. And I ran in, and my mother's a teacher. She wasn't home yet. Ran into the kitchen. I grabbed a jar of honey, went to her bookshelf, pulled out a volume, poured the honey on the cover of that book, tasted it, and cried because I knew my life had changed and that Mr. Felker had changed everything for me. So what I want to say to you next, I do believe he is my hero, as all of my classroom teachers after that became to me, because at last I let them in. And I knew they weren't there to torture me, they were there to help, but I didn't trust anyone. I could give you a cadre of teachers who changed my life, but my minute keeper here, I can't, because I'd be here for a few hours. But there were so many, and each one put a piece of the puzzle together. After Mr. Felker, I went for 1 year of school in Michigan when I spent the summer with my dad, because I thought I don't want to go back to California, even though now that I can read, I'm afraid they'll put me in a special class. So, and plus in Michigan, I could be pretty, I could be smart, and I could be a cheerleader, I could be all that I'm not. At any rate, what I didn't realize is the school sends transcripts. So that's then when Dorothy Peterson came into my life. The class that I was put in, and in those days, they didn't have classes where children learn differently. You were put in actually with handicapped children, which, as it turns out, was a blessing. These people are friends of mine to this day. But the entire school called us the junkyard. And you need to read that book, because what Dorothy Peterson did for me was teach me the value of being different. There's nothing wrong with being different. That's going to be your strength, and I promise you that. That is what's going to make you great. You'll either, it will. Then the next book concerning teachers after that is called The Art of Miss Chu. By then, I had gone back to California to school, and I was allowed actually to go over to Oakland Technical High School to take art classes because I excelled. Violet Chu was my art teacher, who also put another piece of the puzzle together as to why I don't identify words the way you do. She got me in front of M.C. Escher. She got me in front of many things. What she taught me, and this is true of any artist, and I consider teachers, poets, and artists, she taught me to see. It's not enough to look at something. See it. Because when you see it and regard it, that's when you pick up all the information it's trying to tell you. So she put that bit together. And I have other teachers that I'm going to be writing about. I have a book coming out. It's called Mr. Wayne's Masterpiece, and this then was my drama teacher. And he taught me to be able to do what I'm doing now. Because as a young person, my horror, of course, was standing up and reading in front of other people. And I would go to the front of the class, because in the old days, this is awful, but they made you get out of your seat. And you had to come up to the front of the room and open a book and then look at all those people. And the book would start shaking, my knees would buckle, my heart honestly would pound so hard I was sure you in the back could hear it. And I'd hang on to it so tight it bent back my fingernails. And then I'd look at every face in that room and I'd think, oh God, oh God, don't do this to me. Don't make me do this in front of them because they're going to know and they're looking at me and they're going to know how stupid I am. He, Thomas Wayne, turned all of that around. So I have teacher after teacher after teacher I could tell you about that changed my life. And I have to say to you, those of you in this room who are not teachers, but obviously conscientious parents who have brought your children here, please visit the schools your children go to. Our teachers in this country are being maligned, overworked, underpaid, and getting disrespect for what they're doing. I believe with all of my heart the No Child Left Behind mandate has done the worst injustice of all. For those of you that don't know how this operates, what it's doing in essence is forcing classroom teachers to teach these people how to pass tests. That is very different than having them fall in love with the subject and have it burn in their hearts and want to learn everything they can about it. We need to leave the teachers alone. Let them do what they've always done. So, and yes, I'll run for Congress. Gonna go up there. Maybe I should go up there and knock the doors down right about now. And say, what on earth are you doing up here? Do any of you have children? Were you ever a child? Were you in school? I mean, come on. So I believe teachers are heroic, amazing human beings. And please, please take the time to thank them. Think about this. They are with your children more hours a day than you are. They have an awesome responsibility. And the teachers, and I do almost 300 schools a year. I'm here to tell you, I've stepped into more schools than any politician will ever walk into. Trust me. And I see amazing teachers out there. They're being hobbled and manacled. They're literally having 10,000-pound weights put on each ankle, and they're asked to run a race. How can they? It's the American family we need to re-examine. We need to literally think about children and the homes they're coming from, because at 4 years, 9 months, they're already lost if things are going wrong. They need intervention. If I were queen, I would open Head Start all over our country, all over again. So you're looking at someone who has a debt that I can never repay to the amazing educators in my life. And I'm proud to say I'm the mother of an educator. My son is a teacher. He's a college professor, but a fabulous teacher. My daughter is in medicine, but she's teaching. Almost everybody in my family is a teacher except me. Well, and my rotten red-headed older brother. I mean, what a useless individual. I mean, well, at any rate, the one other thing I want to touch on before we go today, and please do come and get books, and I'll try to sign them if I can. You know, when I sit there in a book line and I see people standing there admiring and looking at me, and especially if they're a teacher, if only they knew, I wouldn't be sitting there had it not been for them. And trust me, you teachers in this room, someday a student that is average or below, someday is going to be standing on a stage and they're going to say your name. They're going to say your name. So, the reason I'm here, though, also, I touched on it lightly before, I was the victim of bullying when I was a little girl. Now, you know, early in our lives, it was one-on-one. Kids could gang up on you, but it was in your face, usually out on the playground, because they wanted to get the victim as far away from the teachers as they can, because the teachers are going to help them. But it's taken on now a new frightening dimension in our schools, and it's escalating. Children are now using electronic devices to torture and torment other human beings. So the book I'm appearing on today officially is the newest book for Penguin, and it's called Bully. And it's about cyberbullying among girls. And ooh, I'm here to tell you, they can be pretty awful. Mind you, my philosophy is when children are teasing another individual, there's an unhappiness inside of them. They can't be happy unless they're watching somebody else be tortured, because probably they're being tortured themselves. But at any rate, I'm not going to tell this story to you, but it's a good story. It's not for small children. The students in this book are about 4th grade on up, but you're going to be astounded that this is what's happening in schools. I mean, they do something now. Carrie, my friend, was trying to explain it to me this morning. They're called hate blogs, where they get the entire school to weigh in against one kid. Now, I'm 68 years old, and I'm here to tell you my ego couldn't stand that. How do you expect 11-year-olds to survive it? So think about that. That's what this book is about. Anybody got any quick questions you want to ask? You want to know how old I am, what kind of a car I drive, how much money I make? I drive a great big old SUV because I live on a farm. And I don't apologize for it. I have goats and sheep. Anybody want to ask me how many pets I have? Have any of you been watching A&E's Animal Hoarders? All right, yes.
Hi, I wanted to tell you I really love your books. I think I've read every one.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. And I'm an artist. I'm trying to publish a book, and I was wondering what advice, you probably get that a lot, what advice you have. Thank you.
As an artist, I tell you what was invaluable for me was to join the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, SCBWI. Look them up on the web, and they will send you very helpful material about they send blurbs on each publisher and what kind of books they're looking for. Admittedly now, the warning is because of the economic downturn, they're not acquiring as many books as they used to, but it's absolutely worth doing. Swat up a portfolio. Never leave original work. Try to get maquettes of your original work and leave that with art directors and editors. And then once they have you on file, that's, I think, how you can get a start. Does that help you?
Thank you.
All right. Over here.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm actually a 2nd grade teacher
Ah.
at an all-girls school in the
Ooh.
South Bronx.
Oh, my.
And our classroom is actually named after you, so I am fortunate
Really?
enough to be the
Oh
teacher
my
at the Girls
God.
Prep
Oh
Charter
my
School,
God.
Patricia Polacco classroom. And
Wow.
my question for you is, what advice do you have for my 7 and 8-year-old girls who are, writers and authors and storytellers in their own right?
Well, I think the best advice I give, because I talk to young writers all the time, is write what you have in your heart. I think I'm the queen of personal narratives. The story starts here, and it's going to go out there, but it's going to make a circle, and it has to end up back here, or it's not authentic. Pay no attention to their grammar and spelling at the beginning. I think it's important for them to just get the story out. Once it's there, because I'll tell you, if you could see the papers I hand in to my editor, you know why I'm saying this. Because it's important to get the story out, and in my case, I have line editors and my editor who will correct spelling or help with the constructions of the sentences. Have them just get it out there. Write about what has meaning to them, their pets, their home, their family. I promise you, though, kids now are worried about rather amazing things, and they need the freedom to be able to put that on paper. Because part of the exercise, certainly as a young person, when you can put your pain there, it's not burning here. It's still there, but it doesn't burn anymore. It's there, and you can release it. Does that help? All right. Yes.
Hi, I have more of a statement, and I had to write it really quick to share.
Okay.
Okay, 14 years ago, I sat in a room of first-year teachers who were both nervous and excited to start changing the lives of children. To help motivate us and to always remember that what we do is important, our superintendent read to us, "Thank you, Mr. Falker."
Oh, my.
As the tears fell, I realized I made the best decision of my life to become a teacher. What could possibly be more rewarding than being a positive influence in a child's life and helping them to reach their full potential? Every year since 1998, I have read "Thank you, Mr. Falker" to my students, and each time I tear up because I know what I do makes a difference. So I say thank you, Mrs. Polacco, for your stories. They have touched so many lives, especially mine. I can only hope that one day one of my students remember me and the influence I had in their lives.
And I think they will. They will. I wear a lot of eye makeup, so if I start crying, I get black triangles. Don't panic. Black triangles. I think, for instance, it's important for young people to see that words can move you to tears, that it causes an emotional response. When I visit schools, I try very hard not to break down in front of them because they don't know me. And I don't do it gracefully. I mean, drool, stuff out of my nose, black triangles, and I lose control. I can't even talk. So I don't do it in front of them. But to me, the value of the beauty of words and what they can do to move the human spirit, and I can tell this young teacher, she certainly has done that. I mean, I can't say enough to you the value of the American teacher and what they contribute to life as we know it. And they are truly an endangered species because they're starting to get so discouraged we're losing our enrollment in teaching. And one should ask from this, 30 years from now, how many young people are we going to have still going into the profession? And so the people that do are dedicated beyond your wildest imaginings because they know the reality. Yet they've chosen to be around your children, which is a magnificent gesture and something that says volumes about their spirits. Yes. Did you have a question, sweetie?
Why did you decide to write about your life?
She's asking, why did I decide to write about my life? Well, personal narratives were easy for me because I had so many stories that my grandparents and aunties and uncles, mom and dad, all of these stories. And I've always been compelled, if any of you were a personal friend of mine, and you ask me a simple question like, where do you keep the forks in the kitchen? I have to give you an hour story first. So that is why I think it's almost needing to kind of share all of this information. And that's why I did it. I think why I became a writer, all right, let me go back. If I was a friend of yours and I was invited to your house at your age for your birthday, my family was poor. We couldn't buy you anything. But I would make what I called a fat card for you that I now realize was a book. I would do a drawing of you, lots of drawings. There'd be no words because I couldn't write the words, but drawings of you, and it would be a story that you could follow very clearly. I bound it, sewed the pages, and I gave it to you. My friends to this day still have those books. So this has always been who I am. At 41, what changed my life and why I became a professional author, I think, my son was diagnosed with insulin-dependent diabetes. We were sent home from the hospital with volumes in paper bags that he had to read about his disorder. And I thought, this is just a little kid. This is just a little kid. She has to keep me legal, otherwise. So the very first book, professionally, if you want to call it, was a wordless book for him of how to take care of himself. Diabetics have to take insulin, they have to rotate their sites, they have to eat at a certain time, they have to modify and moderate exercise. They become their pancreas. That's what they become. No, it's this side. So that was the first book. And Thatcher Hurd is a personal friend of mine. His father is Clement C. Hurd, if you've read Goodnight Moon, Clement C. Hurd and Margaret Wise Brown. And Thatcher himself is also an illustrator and writer. He saw it. I went along to meetings of the SCBWI, and the rest, my mother, 27 years ago, bankrolled a trip for me to New York. I saw 16 publishers in 1 week, multiple submitted and sold, everything that I had, and the rest is history. The rest is history. Does that answer it? Yes.
Thank you. I'm a recently retired special ed and early childhood teacher. And actually what you just said are called social stories, and they're used fairly widely, especially with children with autism.
Sure.
I just have a little personal story and a word of wisdom. My sister always had learning disabilities, but nobody really talked about it then. She passed away a few years ago, but she would have been 70. Her son had some learning disabilities, and nobody ever talked about that. Her 2 grandchildren have learning disabilities, and they are going to special schools. And their dad said to me, "Where did this come from? How come we never knew about it?" And I said, "Well, nobody ever talked about it. They always said, well, she's street smart, she's not book smart." So we've been recently going through some of her things, and I found that my mother wrote every single one of her thank you notes when she got married, and she
bless her
copied them.
Yep.
And so my word of wisdom is, if you feel as an adult that you have an issue or you've had learning disabilities, you need to tell your children. Not only get help for yourself, you need to tell your children so they don't see it with shame or anxiety, and they can do something about it.
I have dyslexia, dysnumeria, dysgraphia, and something called failure of sensory integration. So as a kid in school, the minute I could go out to recess, I'm on the swings. And I swing until I'm completely dizzy, because when I was dizzy, I had clarity. And the teacher would have to come out and drag me off the swing back into the building. It's foreign for me to stand still if you're telling me something. Anything you're telling me, I'm going to stand here and start doing this while you're telling me, because it won't go in. It just doesn't go in. The other thing I want to say before we leave today, anyone in this room who is in special classes, this you need to know. You probably think you're there because you're not very smart. The truth is, this is the furthest from the truth. They've just done a 37-year study of young people with learning difference. I don't like to use the word disabled. I'm not, but I sure do it differently. They have found out those kids are actually on the other end of the scale. Drop dead brilliant. The problem is they don't know how to access. They can't get in and access what they know. But ooh, do they know things. And there's nothing wrong with street sense. There's nothing wrong with being smart that way, because I believe in my life, the most successful part of my life was learning to cope with the world that was very foreign to me. And I felt I didn't belong anywhere. So God bless you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right. Did you have something quickly, honey?
Yeah. I just wanted to say, out of every single book that you've written, which is your favorite?
Well, now this is like asking me which one of my children I love the most. I love all of them for all kinds of reasons. I will tell you, now that I'm in my late 60s, the books that resonate to me that I've written are where I have brought people that I loved, who are now gone, back to life on those pages. And then when you look at them, they become part of your life. So in a way, we've given them new life. But whether I like one over the other, no, not really. And I really do have a rotten, red-headed older brother, by the way. Does that answer it for you?
Yep.
Okay. Did you have something over here, sweetie? I'll get to you in a second.
I was wondering what your favorite genre is to read.
Well, good question. She's asking what genre now that I'm adult. I like mysteries. Really gooey, nasty murder mysteries. Because then I can get all of my aggression out by just reading what these people do to each other and think, oh boy, I would too. All right, maybe one more question, because we got the 5-minute light. Yes, sweetie? She's bringing up, we have a meteor festival in my town every year, usually in July. This July we didn't, because my son got married in Hawaii. Now, I'm telling you this because you are looking at somebody that is such a terrified flyer. I have not flown in over 17 years. Well, because I have high blood pressure. And my doctor said, do you realize fear wipes all of the medicine you've just taken out? And he says, if you have an incident at 31,000, they can't help you. Well, my doctor, who is my personal friend, I have now discovered Xanax. And I've also been on a Nutrisystem diet. I've lost over 70 pounds this last year. Well, but I had been without food, no alcohol, so my body was wrung out. Took one pill to get on this plane. I have absolutely no memory of it. My daughter flew with me. I woke up over the Pacific, apparently, and I said to the person next to me, what on earth am I doing on an airplane? And I said, who are you? And the person answered me, I'm your daughter. And we're going to your son's wedding, Mom. So I started drooling and just went back to sleep. So that was a huge accomplishment for me to fly there and back. And I also then got on another plane 2 weeks later and went to my 50th high school reunion. So, thank you, Xanax. One last little question, because we only have a couple of seconds. All right, have you got something urgent? Do you mind if he goes? What? Tell me what you want to know, sweetie. That's fair enough. He's asking, how old am I? I think I'm 68. I think so. I was born in 1944. My birthday is July 11th. I think I turned 68 this year. Did I, or am I 69? I can't. Because to me, chronological age doesn't matter. I literally get out of a bathtub and see myself in the mirror and go, oh my God. That's my grandmother's body. But inside, I'm about 9.5. I'm going to sign off now, but let me say one last thing to you. I had this precious quilt that I used to sleep under as a little girl. And my grandmother would come sit on the edge of that bed every night. She'd lean over and she'd kiss me here and here. Then she'd recite this prayer. I kiss your eyes. I hold your heart in my good keeping. And this day I will thank God that I walk this earth with you. And I am here to tell you I thank God every day that I walk this earth with the species among us that is the most heroic, and that is our classroom teachers. Thank you. Thank you.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.